Alright, we're doing our prospect pipeline review for the Edmonton Oilers today, and before we get into it, what I want to do is just talk about what I mean by prospect and what the tiers we're going to be grouping these players into means. So a prospect is essentially a player who is within 5 years of their first year of draft eligibility, and they haven't been on an NHL roster for more than a season. In terms of the tiers, we start with franchise level players, so Oilers fans think a Connor McDavid, perhaps a Leon Draisaitl, those types of guys who you just never, ever get rid of. The next level is a core player, who is a player that you round those guys out with, who are extremely important, and you really don't want to have to trade them, and they are just high-end players that complement those franchise players. Then you have your depth category, which is 82-game filler NHL players on your second, third, fourth line. They can play a certain role and do quite well, and you like having them around. The maybes category is a bunch of guys with a lot of potential, but maybe not enough to quite get into the role in the NHL they need, or they might have a more limited floor, but the likelihood of getting there just might not be quite enough to put them in that depth category. And then you have everyone else, who is mostly older players that don't look like they're tracking for the NHL, or players that are a bit of a long shot statistically as they are now. So to start things off, we're going to the core category, and they added Matthew Savoie this past summer. I'm a huge fan of Matthew Savoie. I do think that his offensive game might be a little limited in the NHL, but I do feel still that he's gonna be a pretty important second line scoring winger for them. He's got a ton of speed, he's got a ton of skill. I think Edmonton's an interesting fit for him, and we'll see what happens with him. But I will be very curious to see how he does with Bakersfield, assuming he doesn't make the Oilers roster this fall. I'm a really big fan of the raw speed and pace in his game. The physicality of the NHL is a bit of a question mark for me, and he does seem to be a bit of a more individualistic player out there, which may not work in the NHL, but the potential is there. He's a really nice pickup, especially considering the price they paid for him. Taking a step down to the depth category, you've got a couple of interesting ones here as well. In Emil Vinny, who was my favorite goaltender in this past year's draft, Sam O'Reilly, who might have a bit of a limited ceiling, but I do think that there's a strong potential chance that he is a good bottom six NHL player. Physical, he's got a bit of skill to him, he's a really just smart hockey player. He goes out there, he gets the job done, he goes back to the bench, repeat ad infinitum for the rest of his career. And then you have Bo Akey, who I am still positive on after a bit of a lackluster season with Barrie last year. Similar to a guy like Savoie, there's potential. He moves around the ice really well, he's got some good skill. It just has to take another step, offensively especially, and just kind of get there a little more. His defensive game has always been a bit of an issue, but Bo Akey has been pretty solid, and I think there's going to be an interesting player on the NHL roster there one day. Taking a step down, you have a few names in the maybes category here. I really liked the pickup of Will Nickel in the draft this past season. I thought he was one of the more underrated players on the London Knights this year. Robbie Yarventi was a nice little pickup from the Ottawa Senators. He might only be a good AHL scorer, but he does have some good speed and a really good shot in his game, and as a complimentary scorer in the NHL one day, I could see it, but he is in his last year of eligibility on this sheet, and we'll see how things go for him over the course of this year. I did also really like the pickup of James Stefan, and he's been an interesting one to watch over the last little while, and I think the skill level is enough to be a maybe. Brady Stonehouse is a physical, nasty player who maybe could be an NHL player in a depth role, and I think he's a bit more of an optimistic one for me because I've just always liked parts of his game. So yeah, there's a few interesting ones here as well for me in Edmonton. Then we get to the everyone else category, and to be honest, the Oilers are down here for a reason. I haven't been a huge fan of how they have drafted over the last few years, albeit they haven't drafted a ton. These guys are also on the older side of the equation and just don't really show statistical signs of making it to the NHL, but time will tell, we shall see. And so that's it for the Edmonton Oilers. There wasn't really much going on there, but there are some interesting ones, and I thought Matt Savoie was a pretty interesting pickup for them this past season. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel and you'll never miss another one. If you really liked it, you can check out Scouching.ca where you'll get access to exclusive written content, a Discord server, and plenty of cool data tables for drafted and undrafted prospects. So with that out of the way, we're done with the Edmonton Oilers, and we're down to the last 5 teams, and we're starting with the New Jersey Devils.